The iPhone 14, an update to one of the, if not the most popular cell phones in the world. What comes in the box and is it any good? Let's find out. Before we open this box, I would like to say thanks to Apple for letting me borrow this iPhone. I did buy an iPhone 14 standard myself, and it should be here in a couple of days. But until then, so we can get some hands-on experience, let's check this sucker out. And we also have the iPhone 14 silicone case. Pretty excited to check that out. So here we go. Boom. I love it. I love it. So much more satisfying than opening a MacBook. Apple, do this on the Macs. 3, 2, 1. Woohoo. They gave me like the purple color. So we had the purple for the Pro Max and the purple for the regular iPhone 2, and it doesn't look terrible. I think it looks pretty good. In the box, much like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which, thanks to somebody that commented the other day that I hadn't really noticed, but the iPhone and the iPhone Pro Max, they used to have, here, hold on. Like, they used to have different colored boxes. So this is the iPhone SE, and this is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The iPhone Pros used to come in like a more pro colored box, and this year, they both have the same colored box. I don't know if it's saved on like cardboard or coloring or whatever, but just one of those things that I hadn't noticed, but one of you all pointed out to me. So inside the box, the iPhone 14, we get stickers, warranty information, and instead of a punch tool for the SIM card, because there is no physical SIM card in here, it's all eSIM, you no longer need a physical SIM. So you can activate your SIM card when you set up the phone. You don't do that by plugging something in anymore. And we've got the USB-C to Lightning cable. All of that stuff is super fancy. But let's also check out the case, because we're going to pop this thing right in the case first. Now, this case opens up differently than the leather case. I actually like how this box opened better. It's just easier. I'm a huge fan of the silicone cases. These are what I personally use. You may think to yourself, oh, they're just plastic. It's not going to protect your phone. I have beaten the snot out of the case on my iPhone 13 Pro Max, and it's not yet damaged my phone. Look at all this. The case itself has taken an absolute beating, but the phone is still great. So I highly recommend, and I personally use these silicone cases. Okay, we now have the iPhone 14 in our hand, and spoilers, it looks very similar to the iPhone 13. There hasn't been a lot of physical changes to the phone. I don't have an iPhone 13 on hand, but even the camera module is not as striking of a difference as the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the iPhone 14 Pro Max looked like. The 14 looks more like a reasonable camera cutout. Color itself looks great. We get the same lock and power button, no SIM card slot. We get the volume rockers, the silent mode switch, and it just looks great. But what I still wish, and I said this in the 14 Pro Max video, we've got this glass back, which I guess with this purple, you can't really see the fingerprints all that much, which is really good, unless, can you see that? Can you see the Apple logo? Okay, the Apple logo is still a smudge factory, but the rest of this, I don't hate this. This might actually be, so far, my favorite iPhone for just like smudgeability, because the iPhone 14 Pro Max and all the Pro Maxes, all the Pros, has that stainless steel edge, which just is a fingerprint magnet. And normally, you can really make out fingerprints on the glass back here, but this is not terrible. I don't hate this. All right, here we go. Whew, that is a gorgeous looking phone, and that's a good phone to feel in the hand. I'm so used to the massive 13 Pro Max that my sense of what a cell phone should feel like in the hand is kind of warped, but I do appreciate a smaller phone. So let's go ahead and turn this on and see what we got. Apple. Yes, I will make that joke every single time I turn on an Apple device. You know, you gotta have, if you're gonna come to the everyday dad, you gotta imagine there's gonna be some cringy dad jokes. Let's set this up really quick first, because there is something I want to point out. But as you can see here already, you get the same kind of notch as you got in the 13 lineup. It's only the Pro and the Pro Max that get the pill design with the dynamic island. It's not a dating show. It's something on an iPhone, actually. That's real. So you can see it right here. We cannot bring up the brightness until we actually set up the phone. So we'll give this a second to set up. Let's pop it in its case so we don't have to mess with it too much. Ooh, that looks pretty darn good. Like, I'm very happy. Okay, the phone has now updated to iOS 16, and we could quick start it. We will set it up manually. I really like this case. And I know it's not a new case or anything like that. It's very similar, probably the exact same molding and design as the 13 case, but there's something nice about a clean, brand new silicone case because you've seen what I work with. But it's very comfortable to hold, fits in the hand very easily. Now, a few of the key differences while we're waiting for this to update is, unlike the 14 Pro and Pro Max, the 14 does not get the always-on display. It's missing the new fancy like camera features with the 48 megapixels. Obviously, it does not have the dynamic island, but a lot of the like the software stuff, it should have all of that, especially as it has iOS 16. I do like how intuitive and easy the Apple setup system is, but it is kind of a pain when you're trying to quickly show a system or a first impression when you're making a YouTube video. It's almost like they did not think about creating their software experience for YouTubers. Why wouldn't you do that, Apple? So this is the iPhone 14, and it looks pretty good. Another one of the key differences, you'll see that we just turned it on full brightness, and it looks pretty good in here. Unlike the iPhone 14 Pro Max, that when we cranked it to max brightness, it overexposed the camera because it goes up to 2,000 nits of brightness, so you can always see it outdoors. But iOS 16 looks fantastic. There's a lot of cool features inside of here, one of which that I'm very excited about. I guess I'm not excited about it because I hope to never use it, but the crash detection feature, this also has the satellite communication where you get it for 2 years when you buy an iPhone 14 or 14 Pro, where you can talk to a satellite and it will show you where to connect to that. I think that's pretty awesome. Let's see how the cameras are doing. If you do want to use this as your camera for your computer, because it did say it could do that. Okay, so now we are recording on the front-facing camera from the iPhone 14. Now, something that I did notice from the 14 Pro Max, and it kind of looks the same thing here, I actually liked the front-facing camera image quality better than the rear camera image for down here in the studio. I say this about all these videos when we do them inside, is small censored cameras like you find on phones, action camera, stuff like that. They don't do a great job under big studio light, especially keeping proper skin tone. You don't want it to be like weird colors, and I find that the front-facing camera does really well for that. I also found on the 14 Pro Max, and I assume it's the same for the 14, the audio sounded fantastic. Like, I'm not in a very well-treated position. That's why I keep my microphone so close to my mouth. But the audio on the phone has been really great. Okay, so this has been the front-facing camera in 4K 30. Let's swap it around to the rear-facing camera. Okay, stop. 1x, we're still in 4K 30. Okay, now we got to do the thing where we look in the monitor. Okay, record. There we go. Okay, now we are on the main camera of the iPhone 14. If this is very similar to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, we might find that it's a tad oversaturated for skin tones. That's one of the things that I noticed about the 14 Pro Max. You could fix this in post-production if you really wanted to, but if you're using a cell phone as your primary camera, you probably don't want to mess around with it in post-production, but we'll see. Maybe this has a different algorithm or different image signal processor compared to the A16 that you find in the 14 Pro Max, because the 14 does have the A15 from last year, but it's still a fantastically powerful processor, like more powerful than everything else in the market, except when you compare it to the A16. So here's how this looks and here's how this sounds. All right, let's hop outside real quick and see how the cameras look when we use them outside. Okay, and here's the front-facing camera on the iPhone 14. Now, much like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, I have this set in cinematic mode. So can you see all the blurry background? That's called bokeh. Or it's a shallow depth of field. It's not really called bokeh. How it looks and the shape of any distortions is the bokeh. It's not the blurriness that's the bokeh. There's your camera fact for the day. Ding. So how does this look? How does it sound? Let me know how the stabilization works for you. Look at the dynamic range. We mentioned this earlier, but the dynamic range is the difference between the darkest part of an image and the lightest part of an image. So I'm in shadow, the sky is not. So what's the difference? Does it look good? Does it look bad? How's the audio sound? How's the stabilization? Okay. This is the front-facing camera again, so let's swap around to the main rear camera. Okay, now again, I have to look in the window over here to make sure we're properly framed up. Okay, and we are. And this is the main camera, again, 4K 30, because 24 frames per second is for movies. I don't make movies. I make whatever these are. So how's the stabilization? How's the audio? Again, check the dynamic range. Dynamic range is very important if you either can't recover the shadows or the background's all blown out. Like, nobody wants to watch that. You wouldn't watch Avengers Endgame if Tony Stark was in perfect exposure, but the background was all blown out. Okay, It is getting crazy. It's getting cold out here, so let's hop inside and get to the final impressions. Okay, and we are back. So initial impressions of the iPhone 14 after just opening it up out of the box. I think this is going to be a great phone. Have I yet come to the decision that you should upgrade to this from a 13? No, I probably would not necessarily say that you should upgrade to this over an iPhone 13 unless you needed those specific things like the satellite communication or the crash detection. I think it's pretty obvious that Apple's moved more into a every few years upgrade as opposed to an every year upgrade, like what, about 10 years ago. So if you have an iPhone 10 or 11, this starts to look really attractive. If you have a 13 or a 12, probably not so much. But what about you? What would you like to see out of the iPhone 14? Let me know in the comments because I would like to make sure that I make the videos that you all want to see. And if you like this video, click here to watch the iPhone 14 Pro Max unboxing. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.